Welcome to the latest installment of the 30-Minute Workout Series. My name is Jeff Bartels. I'm joined today by my colleagues Stacy Morican and Angel Espinosa. In today's session, we're going to look at how we can create templates for use with Civil 3D Cloud projects. If you're unfamiliar with the 30-Minute Workout concept, this is a platform we've been using at least recently to help folks get up and running using Autodesk's cloud platform to host and manage Civil 3D Cloud projects. We take a step-by-step approach to the material, focusing on the how and why we're doing things. We include practical examples when needed, and we do have some ground rules for the sessions. Some of the examples that we show may be abstract in nature. We do that on purpose. This way we can focus solely on how a tool works. Once you understand how the tool works, you can apply it in whatever situation works best for you. We are committed to always starting and ending on time. No need to take notes. These sessions are recorded. If you do have questions, please put those in the Q&A pane. That's the most efficient way for the folks working behind the scenes to find and respond to those questions. We have got a lot of things to talk about today. I am going to show you where you can access templates in the Construction Cloud platform. We'll look at how we can build and configure templates for Civil 3D use. We'll look at how we can create a Civil 3D Cloud project from a template. I'll be sharing some data shortcut best practices. I'll also show you how you can edit and archive the templates that we create. And at the end, I'll be sharing some additional resources that you can use for reference material that's related to the topics that we talk about today. As always, this is going to be a PowerPoint free zone. We'll be working live in the application for the duration of our time together. Okay, I'm going to drop out of this. And before I get started, let me mention that a couple of weeks ago, we did a 4-part series to help folks understand the basics of creating Civil 3D projects in the cloud. I may be referencing some of the things that we talked about in those prior sessions. If you didn't get a chance to see those sessions or you weren't able to attend, don't worry. I will be providing a link to the playlist for those sessions at the end of today's session. So don't worry, you won't miss any of that material. All right. As you can see, we're starting out here in the web browser. I've gone to acc.autodesk.com and I'm sitting here at the welcome screen. I can see a list of the projects that I have access to. Let's start by looking at where we can find templates. Here on the welcome screen, the reason we're seeing projects is because the projects tab is selected. If I come over to the right, I can select the project templates tab. And here I can see the templates that I have access to. Just like with projects, the templates may be associated with multiple accounts. You can see that I just have one template associated with my account. I also have the ability to use or edit templates for a couple of other accounts. It's important to note that when you create a template, that template can only be used in the account in which it was created. To create a template, we'll click this blue button. And I'm going to click the button in just a second, but first I'd like to talk a little bit about how this button is displayed. If you'll indulge me, I want to do a quick field trip, if you will, in the event you're not seeing this button on your end. I'll show you where you can find it. I'm going to go up to Account Admin. If you remember, I'm an admin for my account. And then I'm going to open the account list here. We've talked about this before. I have access to more accounts than I should. You'll probably just have your own account. Once we go into the account admin, I'm going to come down to project templates. Here I can see the templates associated with my account. Once again, just that one company standard we saw a little bit ago. Right here, we can see that account admins have the ability to create project templates. Project admins can also create templates if the account admin allows it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here under Account Admin, I can come down to Settings, and under Advanced, right here under Account Permissions, there is a toggle that says Allow Project Administrators to create projects and project templates. Currently, this is turned on. If I turn that off in this state, the only people that are going to be able to create templates or projects, for that matter, are going to be account admins. So in the event you're not seeing the Create Templates button, you'll want to check with your account admin and make sure that they toggle this on. Since we're looking at the account admin settings, I want to talk about one more thing. Let's click on roles for a second. Roles are very important when it comes to templates. This is how we assign permissions. So I want to show you these are the roles that we have to choose from. You can edit this list if you want to, if there are any roles in here that you think that you may not need. If you click this More button at the end of each row or at the end of each item, you can remove a role. Note that you can add roles as well. Roles are a quick way to assign rights to projects. Notice if I select Architect, for instance, you can see the default access level for that role is Project Member, and you can change this between Project Member or Project Administrator. If I come down to maybe Project Engineer, for instance, you can see that their default access level is Project Administrator. So just wanted to talk a little bit about roles because roles are very important with templates and just wanted you to see where they're available and how you can edit those if needed. All right, let's go back where we were. I'm going to open this menu at the top of the screen, and then I'm going to choose projects. And then I'll come down and choose view all projects. This will take us to that welcome screen where we can see the project list. And then I'm going to choose the project templates tab. One more thing, notice that the Construction Cloud goes out of its way to help you get acclimated to the platform. There is a learn more button here where you can learn more about creating templates. In the event you don't need to see this panel anymore, you can also close this. To create a template, I will click the Create Project Template button. We can create templates two ways. I can create a template from an existing project, or I can create a blank template. Creating a template from an existing project is probably the fastest way to create a template. I'm not going to use that option today, though, because if I did, this would only be a 5-minute workout. Instead, I'd like to focus on the nuts and bolts and what's going on behind the scenes. Having said that, at the end of today's session, I will be sharing some caveats with respect to creating templates from existing projects. But for right now, we're just going to create a blank template. Let's click Next. I can then give my template a name. I'm just going to call this Civil Template. And then I can choose the account where this template is going to live. I'll drag down and select my account. And I'll choose Create Template. Now, creating a template is a lot like a project. If you've ever navigated a project in the cloud, this is going to be very similar. A template is essentially an empty project. Here at the top of the screen, we can see the template name. Since this is just like a project, I have access to the modules as well. Currently, we're looking at the project admin module, and we are at the configuration options area. Notice that permissions is selected. This is where I can add members to my template. If I wanted help editing this template, multiple people collaborating on this template with me, this is how I can add them. I'll click Add, and then I can open the menu and I can select the folks that I would like to help edit this template. I'll select them just like I'm adding people to a project, very similar, except instead of being part of the project, they're being part of this template. I can also assign them a company and role if I wanted to. I can assign them access level. If I want them editing this template, basically, I may just pick project admin. This way they have the same rights to the template as I do. They can do whatever I can do. If you're looking for folks to just be able to review the template, you might give them project member access. That way you have more control and be able to restrict some of their access. Finally, we could talk about product access. If this was a project, I could select products that I would like these folks to use on the project. Since it's a template, these are the products I would like people to be able to adjust settings. I'm going to choose Design Collaboration for this example. Some of the other items on here we haven't really talked about, but just to show you that you could select those, we'll get into some of these in a future session. Let's choose Add Template Members. When you add template members to a template, you can select them. Just like with a project, you can edit their properties over here to the right. Company, role, access level, and you can toggle on and off their ability to control settings. You can also remove folks from a template by clicking the More button at the top and choosing Remove Member. Now let's take a look at the sentence here. Manage members that can create projects from this template and contribute to its content. So not only can these folks work on the template itself, right now they're the only people that can create projects from this template. Knowing that, let's click the Details tab. Right here under Advanced, we have the ability to publish a template. Currently, that's turned off. If I toggle this on, this will make the template available to anyone on the account that has the rights to create a project. In most cases, that may be what you want to do when you create a template. You'll want the other people in your company to be able to access it. That's what publishing does. If we were to turn the publishing off, then, like we saw before, only the people that are assigned permissions would be able to use that template. Right here, I can edit the template name if I want to. So this is, for the most part, the basic configuration settings of a template. Now we can start adding content to the template. I am going to open the product picker here, and I'll go to Docs so that we can view things like directory structure and permissions and stuff like that. In fact, before I jump there, let me show you this. The project admin area has this configuration group of settings. This is what we've been looking at. When I flip to Docs, notice that Docs mirrors the same configuration settings. Just want to show you that that's some duplicate functionality there. If I want to address the directories, I'm going to go to the Files option. Here's where I can see the directory structure for this template. And by default, I've got the basic project files folder. Here's where I can create folders. We talked about creating folders in part 1 of our 4-part series. If I click the ellipsis button there, I can add subfolders. I'm just going to create one called Add Files. I'll click the check. I can also right-click to create folders. I'll create one called Documentation. I can press Enter. I'm going to create a folder within a folder. I'll right-click on Documentation. We'll add a subfolder, and I'll call this Typical. And then maybe I'd like to create another folder. I'm going to create one that represents the working folder for my data shortcuts. Since I'm building this for Civil 3D use, if you remember when we talked about data shortcuts in part 4 of our previous series, the data shortcuts working folder needs to be inside your project. So I'm going to put that in my template so it's available to new projects. I'm going to put the working folder here right under project files. I'll right-click and choose Add Subfolder, and I'll call this C3D Data. You can create the directory structure of your choice. You can name these whatever you like. This is just an example for today's session. Once I create my folders, I can then assign permissions to these. We talked about that in part 2 of our series. To assign permissions, I'll click the ellipsis button next to a folder name, and then I'll come down and choose Permission Settings. I have selected the Project Files folder. If you look up here, you can see that the permissions are role-based. So when we're dealing with a template, we only have role-based permissions. When we're dealing with a project, we can assign permissions based on individual username and company. But if you think about it, individual username and company, those are kind of specific for different projects. Role is universal, so that's why we use that for template. You can always use company and individual user when we build a project from this. But in here, we're going to use roles for permissions. Let's click Add. For the Project Files folder, I'm going to assign permissions to engineers. I'll start typing that in, and you can see how it filters the list of roles. I'll choose engineer. And then the permissions, I'm going to give them edit permissions. This will allow them to view, download, publish markups, upload, and edit. Let's click Add. And we saw in part 2, when we assign permissions to a folder, that those permissions are inherited by all of the subfolders. So you can see when I grab C3D Data, you can see that engineers are on there and they're inherited. We also saw that you can increase permissions as you go down through the subfolders, but you cannot decrease. So the rule of thumb is to apply the most restrictive rights or permissions at the highest level and then increase them as you go down. Let's add another permission here, maybe for the documentation folder. Choose that. I'll click Add, and then just for this example, I'll type architect, but this could be any role from the list. Permissions, I'm going to give them create permissions in this example. Let me click Add. Another thing that we saw in part 2 when we were adding permissions to folders, the permissions that you assign control what those roles can see. So anybody that's associated with a future project from this template who is an architect would only be able to see the documentation folder and the typical folder because they have inherited rights to that subfolder. Knowing that, you can go through and dial up the permissions that you'd like to assign to your folders based on the needs for your organization. Let me show you something else. We can add content to a template. I can put files in here. If I have typical files that I would like available in every project that I create, I can put them in the template. Here in this typical folder, I can't drag and drop in here, but I can click the Upload Files button. Let's choose Upload from your computer. I'm going to grab just a couple of Word documents for this example. And we'll upload those. So now these files, and you could put any typical files that you might want to have in a project. I'm using Word documents, but you could put anything in there that you want, just to show you that this is possible. But let's do one more thing. I'd like to talk about settings. I'm going to click on Issues. With templates, we can preload settings for use in future projects. We talked about issues in part 2 of our series, and I created some issues like the little push pins that were associated with PDF files. You can see right here the issue types. Issues are based on category and type. You can see they're organized in that way. I show you this to show you that some of these are active and some are inactive. You may look at some of these and say, well, I don't know that I will ever use safety, for instance. If you click on that, you can come over and you can deactivate that. And maybe quality, I don't know that I may use that one. I could go through and I could set that to be inactive. Note that you can also create your own categories or types here if you wanted to, that you might want to use for your projects. Okay, so you have the ability to do this. Now I'm doing it at the template level. You can also do this at the project level. If we do it at the template, then it'll be preset for us. There are some other options up here. Some of these things we haven't talked about yet. These will be topics for another day. I do want to touch on status because when we created issues in part 2, we had an issue type and we also had a status. You can see if I go to the status column, these are also, I have the ability to activate or deactivate these. And you can see some of the options: draft, open, pending, in progress. Now I can't create new ones, but I'm just showing you that we have the ability to select the ones that we want to use with future projects. Okay, I'm going to open up the product picker and I want to go back to project admin for a second. In the project admin area, there is also a members setting. This allows me to manage members that will be included in projects created from this template. Any project created from this template will automatically have those people invited. So if you'd like to do that, that's something that we can certainly do. I'm going to choose add project members. And it's kind of like I'm adding these members right to a project. I have the same settings. I'm going to add Alan Gilbert and Angel to this. I can assign the company and role. I'm just going to keep the defaults for right now. I can choose their access level. And then if a project is made from this template, I can select the products that I would like them to use. Okay, so I'm preloading project members here. So that is also possible. All right, now as we make changes, you may be asking yourself, where's the save button? How do I save my template? We don't have to save anything. As you make the changes, those changes are automatically saved in the cloud. So at this point, I would like to create a project from this template. I'm going to open this menu at the top of the screen, and I will come down and choose View All Projects. To create a project, I will click the Create Project button. And then for the project name, I am going to call this Huntley Road Extension. I could give this a project number, type some numbers in there. What account is going to host this project? Now I have access to a lot of accounts. You maybe just have your one. Project type, since this is a roadway job, I'm going to roll down to the infrastructure types and I'll choose streets, roads, highways. Now, what template do I want to use for this? If I open the template list, notice how they're organized. Published templates, these are the ones that are available to everybody that have the ability to create a project. And you can see civil template, we published that. And then there's unpublished templates. We saw that company standard one before. That one's unpublished, so it's only can be used by the people that are like associated with that template. I'm going to choose civil template, and then I'm not going to mess with the address or start date, end date, anything like that. Let's click to create the project. And then we saw back in part 1, when we created our first project in the cloud, when you create the project, it takes you right into the project admin area to the members list. And I can see that I am a member of this project. I'm also selected, so I can go over and adjust my properties, my role, and my access level. I can also turn on products for myself. I'm going to turn on docs, design collaboration, and model coordination. Okay, so just like we saw before, one thing you may be wondering, I know the first time I created a project from a template, I was asking myself, hey, where are those members? If you remember, we added Angel and Alan to our template. They should be a member of this project. They are. It can take 5 to 10 minutes for them to show up within this environment. It's one of those things when we're dealing with the cloud, it's not going to be as instantaneous as when we're working on the server. So if we give this a couple minutes and we come back, they'll be here in this list. Okay, so they are there, but they don't show up instantaneously. Let's take a look at the directory structure. I am going to go to Docs. And another thing that we saw in part 1, when you create a project, the first time you attempt to go to Docs, it kicks you back out to the welcome screen because it has to finalize some of the file stuff in the background. So I can see here's my project right here. Let me select that to go in. When I go in, you can see the directory structure that was built from that template. If I click the typical folder, you can see the files that I placed in there. If I select one of these folders and I go to permissions, we can see the permissions that I assign role-based. Now, since we're at the project level now, if I wanted to do additional things with respect to company or users, I could do that here. All right, so all of that is saved from the template. Let's go to issues for a second. We talked about issues in part 2 of our series, and I created some issues and I associated the push pin with some PDFs. The issues area here is where you can see a list of all the issues that have been created for a project. I only come here because I haven't created any push pins yet. I just want to show you that there's a create issue button. You can kind of create a generic issue for a project. I'm going to click that and I will come down to type. And if I drag this down, notice that a couple of those, I believe I set those to be inactive in the template. This could be a result of me going too fast, being in real time here. I created that template and immediately created a project from it. So you can see that some of these ones that I deactivated are showing up in this project. This gives me an opportunity to show you, if we go to the issues area, I can come down to settings and I can click types. And I just want to show you that you can do this at the project level as well. Okay, so that's how we can go through and, failed to edit for an unknown reason. So it's probably that it is off and it's still catching up. Once again, going too fast for the cloud, but that's where we could adjust those settings. Okay, I'm going to go back to files. And let's talk for a second about data shortcuts. I would like to put some content in here. I'm going to go to the CAD files folder and I would like to upload a file. I'm going to upload this DWG file that contains a topo. And I would like to create a data shortcut to this topography. So I'm going to be opening this topo in Civil 3D. If you remember from part 3, to open our files from Civil 3D, we'd like to open them locally. We're going to use the desktop connector for that. So in order to be able to access this file, I'm going to go in through Civil 3D through desktop connector. I need to subscribe to this project. So in desktop connector, I will click the settings button here and I'll go to select projects. And then I will select my account. And we'll come down to Huntley Road extension. I'll choose that and click save. That will add it to my local folder. Now I've got the cached folders for this. Let's go over to Civil 3D and I'm going to go to open. And then I will go to Autodesk Docs. That's my desktop connector. Let's go into my account. Let's find Huntley Road extension, project files, CAD files. There's the existing site topo. We could see from the cloud that I have access to it, but it's not been cached on my machine. Let me open that. This pulls it local, locks it in the cloud. So I now have ownership of this file. Let me jump out to the web browser here. And you can see there's the lock is on that file. All right, to create data shortcuts, the first thing I'm going to do is point to the working folder. If you remember, I created a working folder in the template. So here on the Manage tab, I'm going to go to Set Working Folder. And then I will go to my Autodesk Docs drive letter. We'll go to Huntley Road extension, project files, and I will grab my working folder, C3D data. Once I grab the working folder, I can then create my data shortcuts folder. When you're working in the cloud, you will always create the data shortcuts folder using Civil 3D. Okay? You can have the working folder in there, but the data shortcuts folder always has to be made from the desktop application. So now that I've set the working folder, I'm going to say new shortcuts folder. And I can see the working folder there. Here I can name my data shortcuts folder. I'm just going to call this Civil Shortcuts. You could call this whatever you want. Some people call it the project name. Some people may put the project number in there. I'm going to leave the toggle off for use project template because I don't need to develop a directory structure that was created using the cloud template. Let's click OK. And if we look over here, we can see the data shortcuts are set up for me. I can see the docs drive letter, my account, my project files, my working folder, and I can see the Civil shortcuts. In fact, let me go here. If I go to Civil data, you can see there's the Civil shortcuts folder that it made. There's the shortcuts folder, and you can see the contents. All this stuff was made from Civil 3D. All right. So we have to let Civil 3D create that for us. Let's go back to Civil 3D. To create my data shortcut, I can do it now just like I could on a local server. I can choose Create Data Shortcuts. We'll grab that existing ground surface, and I'll click OK. If we look over here under the project, I can see that that's been added. If I select that surface, I can see the surface name, source file name, and then I can see the source location. It's stored in the cloud. All right, if you remember, when I create a template, I can create a template from an existing project. And an existing project, if it's a Civil 3D project, will have the data shortcuts folder with all those subfolders. If you create a template from an existing project, you will need to delete those folders. One more thing, if you create a template from an existing project, none of the files that are in that project go along for the ride. The only thing that you'll get are the directories, the role-based permissions, and any settings. So if you did have typical files you wanted to put in there, you would have to put those in there after the fact. Having said that, you may be wondering, well, how do we edit a template then? Let me show you how you can do that. I'm going to go back to the cloud. And if you'd like to edit a template, we can open the menu here at the top of the screen. Typically, I select projects here and I go down and choose view all projects to go to that welcome screen. Notice there's a shortcut here, always has been there. Let's use that. I'm going to choose template now, and I'll choose view all templates. This takes me right to the templates area, and I can see my civil template. To edit this template, I will click to open it up, just like I would open a project. Before I click to open that though, let me mention this. I have Build installed on my system, so you may not. If you're using BIM Collaborate Pro, Build isn't included with that, so yours would likely say Docs. To ensure that my screen looks like your screen when you click on the project, I'm going to set this to Docs, so that way it opens with the Docs module. Okay, if I go into the template, I can open my product picker and I can flip between the various modules. Let me mention one thing here real quick. You can see that Docs had this configuration area. It's kind of redundant information, but I found that if I want to adjust configuration settings, it's better to do it on the project admin side. Because if I choose permissions, notice it's not showing me those other two folks that I said I wanted to have be editors of my template. It recognizes they're there, because if I tried to add them again, it would say, hey, they're already a member of the project, but it doesn't always display under Docs. So since this is redundant settings, if you want to adjust the configuration settings, you'll want to go to project admin. From permissions here, we'll be able to see everybody. I want you to be aware of that. If I wanted to edit my directory structure and things like that, I'm going to go to the Docs module. Let's choose Files. Under Files, this is where I could create new directories. I could rename directories. I could delete directories. I could adjust permissions. I could upload new files if I wanted to, just like the workflows that we saw earlier. One more thing, I'm going to go back to Project Admin. And here in the configuration area, if I wanted to rename the template, I could do that here. If I wanted to turn the publishing on and off, I could do that there. I could add more people under permissions. Finally, if I wanted to remove a template such that it's not available anymore, I could archive it. If I click the archive button, this will obviously unpublish the template, so it's no longer available to folks. If I choose archive, that template will no longer display in the template list. Any archived templates can be accessed or restored by an account admin. If I come up to account admin, for example, this is full circle. This is where we started out today. Under account admin, if I go to project templates, under active, this is the template that's associated with my account. If I go to archived and I come down, there's my archived template. If I wanted to restore that, I could click the button right here to bring that back. Archiving a template doesn't affect any existing projects created from that template. If you edit a template, it doesn't affect any existing projects. All right, dangerously close to the bottom of the hour here. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. I've got some additional resources I would like to share with you. Angel and Stacy are going to pop those into the chat. I'm going to be giving you a link to the 4-part series on the basics of creating civil 3D projects in the cloud. That is a playlist that will walk through everything you need to know, at least the basics to get up and running using this. It can help fill in some of the gaps if some of the things that we saw today were new to you. I'm also sharing a link to the Create Project Templates course. This is part of the ACC Learning Center, and it covers even more information that we talked about today. I'm also giving you a link to the ACC Learning Center. I can't say enough great things about that site. It contains high-quality, free, video-based tutorials to help you get up and running using the cloud. And I'm also supplying a link to the Autodesk webinars page because there are going to be some new 30-minute workouts, another series starting up in January. That's one place where you can check for that. You can also check on LinkedIn, and I'm sure the folks from Autodesk will be reaching out when new sessions are scheduled. We talked about a lot of things today. I showed you where you could find templates. I showed you where you can build and configure templates for Civil 3D use. We created a Civil 3D project from a template. I shared some best practices for data shortcuts. We looked at how we could edit and archive templates, and I shared some additional resources. In the event we've not gotten all the questions at this point, we will get back to you with an answer so long as we have your permission. On behalf of Angel Espinosa, Stacy Morrigan, and myself, I want to say thank you so much for coming. We value your time. We hope you find value in these sessions, and we look forward to seeing you guys again at the next 30-minute workout.